Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. What an interesting kind of juxtaposition here. You've got this billionaire, the founder of this Patagonia company, basically just going, yep, giving the company away, giving the $3 billion company, just giving it away. Going to give it to a pair of trusts with the mandate that, well, all of their profits, about $100 million a year, go specifically to fighting climate change. You go, whoa, socially responsible businesses can't exist. You know, people who care about somebody else, the next generation, the future, a legacy. And this is what I've been saying about the very wealthy. You know, Bezos could have a legacy, really could. He could have a legacy of being the greatest human in the history of humanity. Using his wealth in a much more, well, useful way, other than shooting, phallic-looking rockets up into space. Could have a much bigger role in the future of humanity. I don't know, figuring out how to do some stuff around saving the planet, helping rebuild a prosperous working class so people have hope and opportunity and unite the country together. Yeah, no, it's just easier to shoot phallic things, into places. Yeah. Now, I take that because this is where I go, oh, there's hope. There is hope. There's some hope that maybe, humanity's not all ugly. And then I look at the reality of, the stories coming out today. And I've been spending a lot of time looking at the potential of a rail strike on Friday or a lockout. Don't know which way this is going. But rail service stopping across the country. And look, as someone who spends a lot of time in the rail yards, I know nobody who works in them is happy because they're overworked, they're underpaid, they're underappreciated, it's a tough, dangerous job. And you have the rail barons who are wildly, wildly profitable. And yet the jobs, they're not that great. It's not even, look, working people aren't asking to make a killing. They just want to make a living. They just want to make ends meet. They just want life to get better. They want opportunity. And what's interesting to me is I look at someone like Warren Buffett, who famously said, it's class warfare, and my class is winning. But we shouldn't be. Understanding that the vast majority of us support workers and support an economy that works for all and a tax code. Even Buffett talks about this. It's insane that he pays a lower tax rate than his secretary. But yet, here we are in this moment that, the Buffett investor class is winning this class war. And why is that? Well, because of just how easy it is to divide you and me and we in the working class. How easy it is to pit us against each other and create these fires of us, looking at our neighbors with a side eye. And I'm looking at the news reports. I'm looking at how it's being presented. I'm looking at what Republicans are proposing. And look, there are some Democrats who are quietly saying, maybe we should force those people not to go on strike or just shove that contract that the Presidential Emergency Board proposed, shove that down their throat, just jam it right down their throat, make them, because, hey, they have the power to do that. We're in this moment where we in the working class are they're throwing us propaganda. And that propaganda is to be angry at those employees, at those workers, the people we used to call frontline heroes, the people we used to call essential. You remember them? Yeah, I know you remember them. We're supposed to be angry at them because, well, what do they want? Now, mainstream media throwing out, the Presidential Emergency Board was going to give them a huge raise, 24% increase over the life of the contract. They're going to get $1,000 bonus. They're going to get all the issue's not money, man. The issue is not money here. The issue is, can you get a day off? And it comes back to that frame. An old Romanian guy I used to know. He always said, I came to this country so I could work to live. I came from a place where I lived to work. And that's a real important distinction. These people want to be able to work to live. They want to be able to, put a roof over their kid's head, put food on the table, opportunities for them, all that stuff. The things that we all want. The reason we all go to work. These folks, these engineers and these conductors, they don't get that. They don't get days off. And I think this is where a real explanation has to happen in the working conditions of these folks. Because again, as I say, people unionize and people, bargain and strike and all that stuff over wages, hours, conditions. Conditions being, in this day right now, the most important part of all of these discussions. These are people who do not have a day off. Nothing. You go, but Rick, we need them on the job. Yeah, we do. And if they're sick and if they die, we don't have them either. This is one of those things where understanding their conditions. Walk with me, if you will, because I actually know a little bit about this. I was on call myself for 11 years. But we had, after so many days, you had time off. They don't get any guaranteed time off. So 30 days a month, 12 months a year, 365 days in that year, they're waiting for a phone to ring, whether it's at home or in a hotel 1,000 miles from home. They're waiting for that phone. And this is what the rail industry has built their profitability on the lives of people who are sacrificing so that their kids and their future can be better. And I don't think you should have to sacrifice one for the other, especially in this day of technological advance. Now understand, like I said, I spend a lot of time in rail yards. Antiquated equipment. The technology, when you talk to these people, the technology is years old. In this day and age, you really want me to believe that you can't schedule somebody within a couple of hour block? And as profitable as the rail system is, you can't absorb that minor cost so that people can have lives, so that people can plan to go to their kids' soccer game once in a while, so people can go to their kids' weddings at some point, a doctor appointment, any of that. This is what this is about. This is about dignity. This is about life-work balance. Don't be distracted by, they're just greedy. It's not about the greed. But what we're going to be sold, and this is the important part, and this is where Republicans in the Senate, today you're trying to ram through a mandate that they have to take the Presidential Emergency Board's recommendations. Richard Burr of North Carolina, Roger Wicker of Mississippi, they want to move through and do it quickly on a resolution to require railroad workers to accept the labor deal. You have to do it. And this is Republican world. This is you want to know the difference between the two? You want to know the difference between Democrats and Republicans? This is a huge one. Because Republicans don't want workers to have rights. You will do what you're told, when you're told, how you're told, and you have nothing. Because understand, in most states, like mine in Pennsylvania, the employer-employee relationship is still that of master and servant. Once you cross that threshold into the employer's realm, you are theirs. They can make you do just about anything, as long as it's not against the law, because we do have some laws, few, but some. But you're basically their property. And we've got Republican senators right now going, we're gonna take the only right that working people have away. The only right that we as workers have is the right to fold our arms and march our feet. The right to not work, to withhold our labor. And they're saying, no, we're going to take that away from you. Even if you're not a union member, even if you're not in the railroad, and look, and if you're like me, worried what this is going to do to the economy, and I'm sure the White House is worried what this is going to do to the economy, we as working people in this moment can send a message to the investor class. Because what the big money people are planning on is that we're going to attack the workers, that we're going to eat each other. And again, this isn't right-left. This isn't Democrat-Republican as much as this is up-down. This is the people in their ivory towers, the CEOs in their boardrooms and the penthouses dictating the terms of someone's life that they don't even know, just a number on a balance sheet. And this is where you and me, we can send them a message and say, no, we won't be divided. We're not going to buy the nonsense. Every worker should have dignity. Every worker should have the ability to work to live, not live to work. And that's what this is about. So if someone says, well, they get paid really well, so they're going to have, no, it's not about the money. It's not the money. It's the time off. It's the time with family. And ask yourself, I mean, seriously, ask yourself. Let's say you made double the wages you make now. Would it be worth missing every birthday, missing every football game, every baseball game, every event, every concert? Would it be worth missing your entire child's growing up, missing your spouse? I've always said, and look, I've been in the trucking business a bunch of years. I've always believed that if you're not at home keeping your side of the bed warm, somebody will be. Think of the number of broken families because, hey, there's you're tethered to this company. Is that worth it? And I know people say, well, they can quit. Yeah, they don't like it. They can go somewhere else. And that's such a defeatist mentality. That's where my idea is, how about we make things better so no one has to endure the kind of struggle and the kind of abuse that this is. This is abuse. And the union finally is stepping forward. The workers are finally saying enough. And in this moment, after the pandemic, after showing up through all of what happened through there, and then being told how wonderful they were, they're saying, hey, we want to be treated as such. And we want a day off so we can take care of ourselves. We can take care of our children. We can take care of our families. Is that too much to ask? So if a strike happens or if a lockout happens because the Buffetts of the world demand it, when things get tough, remember this, because it's not the workers. No worker wants to go on strike. But if it means that you're going to be able to right a wrong, you do it. And you follow it through to the end. And I'll tell you, I'm with these miners, or these railroad workers, and the miners down in Alabama, and the workers across this country doing it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Right back. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I mean, you look at the reality of the rail industry last year alone, $20 billion in profit. 20 billion with a B. $20 billion in profit. Their CEOs, the CEOs of Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern, made over $40 million each in compensation. And you're going to tell me that, sorry guys, we need you to work every day for your entire career. We need you to forego that childhood. Forget all that stuff. You're a railroad guy. That's what you do. That's who you are. So that, because we need 41 million next year, or 40 million and $1 more. Because as I talked about yesterday on the program, I can't imagine that having a schedule for these guys and these women. I can't imagine that this would cost them all that much. And what it might do, it might actually keep people in the job, because I know people who say, well, you don't like it, you can leave. A lot of people are leaving. And they're having an enormous problem. And again, in a moment when we were talking about we have supply chain issues, the rail being a huge part of that. Now, understand, we're heading towards it. I think the rail wants this. They're already paring things down. I was in the rail yard last night, and basically people were bobtailing in, just the tractor going in and pulling trailers out. I don't think I've seen the rail yard as empty as it's been, as it was yesterday, in a very long time. So they're preparing, and they're preparing and I think all the shippers and all the trucking companies are preparing as well. This is bad. This is bad all around. And this comes back to the companies who could easily give these workers the dignity that all of us demand. It's that simple. And look, this is where we have to unite. We have to unite in this moment and stand together. Here's an interesting, funny, crazy story. Welcome to Pennsylvania. This is going to be the weird part. We've got a guy running for governor who wants to make Pennsylvania the Florida of the Northeast. So I'm thinking about, maybe we should start it instead, because everyone's heard of the Florida man frame. Maybe Pennsylvania man is coming. Pennsylvania man is coming right up behind, because on Saturday, 61-year-old guy out in Westmoreland County, dressed in a bright yellow vest, a rainbow wig, carrying a handgun, went into Dairy Queen, demanding that Donald Trump be reinstated president. You can't make this stuff up. Evidently, the police were called on him. He said that originally he was working as an undercover person with the state police, doing a major drugs thing, and then kind of changed that a little bit. Claimed he was talking to God. He was a prophet. He was going to kill all Democrats because Trump was still president. And, blah, 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 rambling. Mental health treatment certainly in his future. But here's the problem. Had a handgun on him. When they went and they searched his car, had 2 more loaded handguns, a 9mm and a 22, and 62 rounds of ammunition. You got to go, gee, I wonder what toppings he wanted on his ice cream. I mean, this is craziness. And the weird thing is all the reports that we're seeing is that this midterm election is going to be close. It's going to be a close midterm. And you go, how? Exactly how is this going to be a close midterm, given the fact that, look, the Republicans have lost their minds. Out of one side of their mouth, they're saying, no, we believe in states' rights. On another side, we're going to have a nationwide ban on abortion. I think a majority of them believe that the election was stolen, and you've got people who, like this guy with the rainbow wig, gonna hold up a Dairy Queen I don't even know what the thought process that goes into, I'm going to go to Dairy Queen, and that somehow is going to equate to Trump being president again. Look, I'm not in the Q circles. I don't know, but it's very, very strange to me. But when you look at the issues that people are concerned about, high prices and inflation, I think the administration is working on that. But the future of democracy, that's a big one. That should be a no-brainer for the sane and the rational. Abortion policy, front and center. There are things that we should be working towards, working together on, and moving us in a direction that, maybe some of this, maybe this guy in the wig gets the treatment that he needs. Maybe if we don't have a president, spreading, lies and propaganda, maybe the dim don't go along. And this is my problem with what the right has created. There's a genie that got out of this bottle, and I don't know that they, well, I know they don't want to put it back, but I don't even know that they can put it back in this moment. Because some of the people that I've met recently, wow. And this state where I'm at, the gubernatorial election here is where the dividing has really happened. Because they're, and I'm talking to my working folks, there is a very clear distinction. We can talk about, election deniers. We can talk about, Christian nationalism. At the end of the day, Doug Mastriano would be the guy who signs right to work in this state. That would destroy workers' abilities to fight for those better wages, hours, conditions. And I know right to work sounds so nice, doesn't it? I've had people go, well, everyone should have the right to work. And you go, yeah, we agree on that. But that's not what they're talking about. There's a difference between their messaging, what they're selling you, the bumper sticker that they want you to slap on your rear end, and what the policy actually means. And what the policy means is starving worker organizations by getting freeloaders to be able to get the benefits that union members fight for and not having to pay for them. That's what that means. It's the right to freeload. And we had better figure out quickly, especially my union brothers and sisters, because you are the ones that are on the chopping block. And I find it amazing that there are union people in this day and age ready and willing to vote for Republican on any stripe right now. There used to be pro-union Republicans. There were a number of them, and I got that. There aren't today. And I know, but Rick, the Democrats aren't that great for working people either. And I agree, they're not that great, but they're movable. And I think what Biden has been doing is really been pushing in the right direction, fighting back against neoliberalism, reshoring manufacturing, investing in infrastructure. And oh, by the way, making sure that the investments that we're making in manufacturing have a union component, that in the infrastructure, prevailing wage laws are in place so that those wages aren't desperation wages, aren't transient labor wages. This is one of those moments where we've got to be moving in a direction that helps working people, that helps us move forward, and gets us in the right direction. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Share your thoughts, questions, comments, because this is an important election. And like I said, I can't imagine that it's going to be this close. You go, hey, it shouldn't be. It should not be that close. But because of the misinformation that is constantly drumbeated into people's ears, because of just how divided we've gotten, we're in the spot. But for me, this rail thing's important. So if on Friday that the workers end up having to strike, or the railroads lock them out, my suggestion, find a striker, adopt a striker. The community should be stepping forward in this moment and ensuring that those strikers, that they're able to support their families and that they know we've got their backs. It's that simple. I got to take a quick break. When we come back, Jeff Timmer is going to be here to share some thoughts on just how bad the Stop the Steal stuff has been from the right and some stuff around that. Got to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 1917.
That was the day Illinois Governor Frank Loudon hoped to meet with striking streetcarmen in an effort to end their strike. Transit workers in Springfield, the state's capital, had been off the job since July 25th. But the strike had gained so much support that Springfield had now erupted into a full-blown general strike. According to the Sangamon County Historical Society, thousands of union members shut down mines, railroads, bakeries, restaurants, laundries, and construction sites following the violent crackdown of a pro-labor march by state police and militia. The march had been scheduled for September 9th.
The union hoped to show support for the striking streetcarmen after a number of clashes between strikers and state militia. After they were denied a permit, many of the 50 or so unions decided to march anyway and were attacked. Some were shot. More than 40 suffered bayonet-inflicted injuries. By the 11th, most everyone in Springfield had walked off the job. Striking women shoe factory workers stopped a streetcar, pulling the scab drivers off by force. By the end of the week, as many as 12,000 members of 34 unions in the city were on strike. When telephone operators walked off the job, they paralyzed communications of the scab streetcar drivers and the state National Guardsmen. The streetcar strikers refused to meet with the governor until troops were withdrawn from the city. The governor insisted disloyal, pro-German forces were at fault for the labor troubles. By the 16th, the streetcarmen agreed to negotiate and the general strike was called off. But the company refused to meet striker demands for recognition and higher wages, or even take them back.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
For generations, workers have been punished by corporate bosses for watching the clock. But now, the corporate clock is watching workers, called digital productivity monitoring. This surveillance is done by an integrated computer system including a real-time clock, camera, keyboard tracker, and algorithms to provide a second-by-second record of what each employee is doing. Jeff Bezos, boss of Amazon, pioneered use of this ticking electronic eye in his monstrous warehouses, forcing hapless, low-paid pickers to sprint down cavernous stacks of consumer stuff to fill online orders pronto. Beat the clock or be fired. Terrific policy, exclaimed taskmasters at hospital chains, banks, tech giants, newspapers, colleges, and other outfits employing millions of mid-level professionals. So they've been installing these unblinking digital snoops to watch their employees, even timing their bathroom breaks and constantly eyeing each one's pace of work. They've plugged in new software with such Orwellian names as Work Smart and Time Doctor to count workers' keystrokes and to snap pictures every 10 minutes of workers' faces and screens, recording all on digital scoreboards. You are paid only for the minutes the computers, quote, see you in action. Bosses hail the electronic minders as Fitbits of productivity, spurring workers to keep noses to the grindstone and also to instill workplace honesty. Only the whole scheme is dishonest. No employee's worthiness can be measured in keystrokes and 10-minute snapshots. This is Jim Hightower saying employees call this digital management demoralizing, toxic, and just wrong. But corporate investors are pouring billions into it. Which group do you trust to shape America's workplace?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So today, the interesting news in Congress, New Jersey Representative Josh Gottheimer and Republican Representative from Michigan, Fred Upton, they've unfurled some legislation titled the Electoral Count Reform and Presidential Transition Improvement Act. Yes, that is a mouthful. But the idea is maybe no more coup attempts. Maybe we, all of the things that were attempted during the end of the Trump era, maybe we don't do that in the future. We'll see where it goes. They're saying it's bipartisan. I got to find out how many Republicans other than Fred Upton signed on to this. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, the coup attempt and maybe how we stop that in the future. I've asked Jeff Timmer to come talk with us. He's a political strategist and a senior advisor with the folks over at the Lincoln Project. Jeff, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
We always love having you. So what do you make of this? This is not the first anti-coup attempt bill, but it's the latest. Thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think there is in the right place. Fred Upton's somebody I've known for a long time. I've known Fred for nearly 30 years, and I think he's one of the good ones. It's unfortunate that Congress is losing somebody like Fred. He's one of the, there's going to be fewer Republicans like Liz Cheney and Fred Upton and more like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz. But I guess my fear is that as often is the case with Congress, some of the efforts are too little, too late, or not enough. And that's what I fear with something like this, is that the threat that we're facing, that democracy is facing, that the country is facing from these people, these MAGA Republicans, these America Firsters, these full fascists, I don't even want to give them the semi-fascist title, they are so hell-bent on their efforts to undermine faith in democracy, to tip the scales of the election mechanism, the counting of votes in their favor, even if they don't get the majority of votes, that I don't know that something like this will necessarily stop their efforts to undermine democracy. Now, it might cause them to divert and re-strategize and look at the presidency and the electoral college differently, but it's not going to stop the demons that they've let out, that have been unleashed since 2020, that are working their way into the precinct level of the way elections are run. And that's something that we've been seeing across the country, is getting people implanted, embedded into these, right down to the precinct level where the people go in to vote, getting these MAGA election deniers, these people who have said they will, their loyalty is to Donald Trump, not the oath that they take or the rule of law or the Constitution or anything. And these people are going to be by the hundreds or thousands scattered throughout the country.
No, and that's frightening. And look, in my state where I live here in Pennsylvania, we got a guy running for governor who has said that if they don't like the results, they just set it aside.
Yeah, it's insane. It really is. It's 240 plus years of the American Republic, through all of the good and all of the bad, has managed to maintain this peaceful transition of power, this faith in the democratic process, regardless of your partisanship. Partisans can fight fiercely during campaigns. When the votes are counted, somebody wins, somebody loses. The loser accepts defeat and goes on to fight the next election. That's what's always happened until 2020, when we had the first violent transfer of power and the first denial of the outcome of the election. And now that has become commonplace, and we're going to see it in 2022, and we'll see it in 2024.
Yeah, I had a Republican friend say that this is the result of 20 years of participation trophies, and because there are no losers anymore. So the Republicans who lose, Trump lost. It's that simple. That they won't admit it. They won't fess up to it. And there's no, and they're poor sports. I mean, this is 20 years of poor sportsmanship come to a head. He was what he was saying.
Yeah, well, there's a divide within the Republican Party. There's a small group of people who believe the nonsense, who actually believe the talking points about the election was stolen, that there was fraud, and Donald Trump is the legitimately elected president. That's a small number. Most of the people know that it's all insane, it's all a lie, that it's all made up to placate the base, to fuel the outrage that we've seen, that keeps them motivated to punch above their weight when it comes to turnout in elections. And I think those people are even worse than the crazy ones who believe it, because they're cynically manipulating the process to maintain their own power. They're risking the entire American experiment as a result of it. It really is. It took one election. You know, they say democracy is only as safe as the next election. Well, we saw how close we came in 2020. I know how close we are in 2022, and I fear for 2024.
No, it's an excellent point you make. There's one thing about being a true believer and believing that you're fighting the good fight, and there's another thing of you just sold your soul for a couple of pennies. And for the power that comes along with abusing that. I see where you're going, but my problem is, I used to believe that there were good Republicans left, and that there was the soul of the Republican Party that was still there. But I'm looking at these election results where these crazy people are running for Secretary of State, and they got it through the primaries. There were election deniers have gotten through the primaries. You got the governor's race. What was it, New Hampshire? Now it got a crazy guy. I would love to believe that there are still good, decent, honest, hardworking conservatives who believe in those principles of the Eisenhower, even Reagan era. I'm just struggling to see the results, Jeff.
Yeah, well, they don't. There are so few of them that they could be in a museum. There are people like Fred Upton. That we talked about at the top of the segment here. There are people like Liz Cheney. There are some, but they've been forced out of the party. The cancer has spread, it's metastasized, it infects every cell of the Republican body now, and even those who in the way they live their lives, and even in the way they conduct their own personal political business, they're not part of this MAGA routine, but they enable it either through passivity or through going along just enough to maintain their own positions. And that has the same effect of being, full. They might as well have been there on January 6th, those people that go along with it, because they are corrupting and corroding the faith, the shared faith in democracy. And it only works if we all, at the end of the day, no matter what we believe, what our ideology is, what our policy differences are, what our value differences are, if the one shared things that Americans have is that we accept the results of our elections, and if we stop doing that, the whole experiment is over.
It all falls apart. I'm with you there. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Jeff Timmer, political strategist, senior advisor with the Lincoln Project. Make sure you check out his podcast as well. He's the co-host of the A Republic podcast. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. Now, what's interesting is you bring up a point that I agree with you 100% on. It's about the sanctity of the ballot box. If we can't accept that, the results that come out of the voice of we the people, we've got nothing. But again, you've got people who are saying, but Jeff, it was stolen. The election was stolen. They ripped it. They robbed us. And yet what's interesting to me is the very people who are pointing their finger saying they stole it are the very people who are trying. And I looked at this story coming out of Albany, New York, where you've got this Republican county board elections commissioner from, Rensselaer County, who looked like he was going to be stuffing ballots. He had absentee ballots and used information for 8 voters without their permission. Is that not a problem?
It's a problem, and so many of. First of all, there's so little actual fraud that happens in our elections, but anecdotally, all the fraud that we seem to have since the 2020 election and since seems to be these cases of these MAGA Republican Donald Trump lovers committing the fraud. I have yet to find a story about somebody who wasn't filling out their dead wife's ballot so that Donald Trump could get the extra vote, or like this guy in New York. And it really is, it's a case where you have a group of arsonists running around saying, look, everybody, there's fires everywhere. We need more firefighters. We need to do more things to stop the spread of the fires as we're running around setting the fires. And so we have the arsonists are the ones screaming about the fires. And that's what the Republicans are doing with election integrity, election fraud, all these bills to restore the public's faith in elections. The only reason the public doesn't have faith in the elections is because of the Republicans and their nonstop propaganda that is all lies about the 2020 election.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. So I guess the last line of question then goes: is there anything we can do about this? I mean, there have been stories. I mean, yesterday the story of Lindell, the pillow guy, got stopped at a Hardee's, and the FBI took his cell phone because there's some investigations going on. In fact, my favorite line of all of today was the FBI may have more cell phones than Verizon, as they've got my Congressman Scott Perry's cell phone, they've got Rudy Giuliani's phone, they've got Lindell's, they've got this Boris Epstein, Mike Roman, they've got a whole bunch of these people's cell phones because they were recording their treason. I think I find it interesting.
Enter promo code MyPrison. The way to combat this is, one, there needs to be accountability. The people, there has to be a penalty. Even though the coup didn't work, it was a deliberate attempt. It was a conspiracy to overthrow a fair democratic election. There needs to be accountability. That's first. But the thing we have to remember, and all your listeners and viewers need to know, is there are more of us than there are of them. There might seem like a lot of them, but it is not half the country. It's not half the country believes this. They are a small, squealing minority who are making noise above the size of their contribution to the electorate. But the danger is that they wear us down with their crazy. It's nonstop. It goes 24/7. They don't need to sleep. Sane people get weary of this. They're just out living their lives, trying to make. They don't live and breathe politics the way that we might. But people need to vote. They need to know their vote matters. They need to get involved. Give $5, $10, whatever you can afford to a candidate that's going to protect democracy. I'll tell this as a former Republican. If you're a Republican, you need to vote for a Democrat. There are no Republicans who are going to protect democracy. You need to put your country above the party.
No, I mean, we're in one of those moments. Look, I used to have a lot of Republicans that I would have conversations with, and we had good-spirited conversations because I think we all wanted the same things. We just had different ideas on how you get to those places. And I don't feel that way anymore, Jeff. I don't feel that we have that common bond with, you say a squealing minority, but somehow they keep putting people into office, and it appears this election that there's some problems.
Oh, there's risk. There's risk that people like Doug Mastriano can win, become governor of Pennsylvania, that Tudor Dixon can get elected governor of Michigan, that Kerry Lake can get elected governor of Arizona. That's the risk. And I think we need to be alarmed. We need to be out there saying in these next 56 days, everybody worry. Vote early. If you're in an early vote state, if you can vote absentee or by mail, get your vote in. Make sure your family and friends vote. Convince them what's at stake here. It's not hyperbolic to say that democracy is hanging by a thread, and this is the most important election, certainly the most important midterm election that we've had in this country.
No, and I throw this out to people. I just had a guy tell me, well, I vote in every presidential election. I go, yeah, that's great. These are the really important ones. These are the ones that affect your life more directly than even the presidential election. This is the one you should be voting in. The midterms, the off-year elections, those are just as important. Voting is not a bystander sport. You got to democracy is not a spectator sport. You got to get in there and participate.
Yep, we get the government we deserve, and so we need to get out there, put an emphasis on what we want.
Good stuff. Jeff, I appreciate the time. Always good to talk with you.
Thank you, Rick.
Good stuff. Jeff Timmer. Make sure you check out his podcast, A Republic Podcast. We'll get links out on social media how you can do that. Going to take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1929. That was the day that Ella Mae Wiggins was gunned down on her way to a rally of striking textile workers in North Carolina. Ella Mae was born in the mountains of Tennessee. Her father was a lumberjack who was killed on the job. She and her brother had entered the textile mills to help support their family. She married another mill employee, and they had 7 children. When her husband left, Ella Mae struggled to keep her family afloat. When the Great Depression came, textile mill workers were subject to the, quote, stretch out. Owners demanded that fewer workers quicken their pace to produce the same results. In response, textile workers began to organize and strike in Gaston County, the heart of the Southern textile industry. Ella Mae became a local leader of the National Textile Workers Union. She advocated for organizing both white and black workers.
she became known for leading the other workers in song. One of her most poignant songs was the Mill Mother's Lament. The lyrics told her personal struggle of a mother trying to support her children. On the day she was killed, Ella May was in a truck heading to the workers' rally. They were met by an armed mob deployed by the mill owners. The unarmed workers turned their truck around, but the mob chased them and gunned down Ella May. 5 people were charged, but they were acquitted of her murder.
We leave our homes in the morning. We kiss our children goodbye. While we slave for the bosses, our children scream and cry.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Our grocery bills to pay. Not a cent to spend for clothing. Not a cent to...
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. You got a thought, question, comment? Want to hear it? Let's go to the phones. We've got Alice on line 1. How we doing, Alice?
Oh, we're doing okay. I wanted to say, it's amazing, and I had read that the couple of articles where they said the extreme right-wing Republican nutters make up about 18% of the Republican Party, and I thought, I think it's a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a lot more than the 18% that they're saying, but I don't think it's all of them. My problem is what Jeff said. And my problem is I don't know the difference between the true believers, the Q crowd, the MAGA folk, and the people who are just using them for their political advantage. I see, like I said, and I think Jeff said it too. It's worse. The other guy's worse. I get the true believer. The manipulator, much worse in my view.
Oh, I agree with you. We have, and I've told you before, in our little hamlet, it's about 99.5% extreme Republicans. And we had the election there last fall where we had a new mayor and a couple of council members and whatnot. And, of course, the nutters here in town put the most extreme people on there. And my neighbor went to a meeting the other night, and she come back and she was like, they had from another borough an ordinance officer come in, and he carries a gun, and he was telling them, you can go on people's property and all this. And I said, hey, what are you going to do? I said, we know that you can't do that, but obviously they don't seem to understand the law. So I just think it's amazing.
No. Again, as Jeff said, we get the government we deserve. I
agree. I agree.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I appreciate the call, Alice. Good stuff.
Bye-bye.
But there's part of me that goes, maybe we need to go through these moments. Maybe you need to have the nutters there doing crazy stuff like, yeah, you can carry a gun on other people's property. No problem. Don't worry about it. I don't know. No, I got an email from Chris, and it's one of these emails that I actually cherish these kind of things. I've always throughout the years enjoyed people who go, you know what? I don't necessarily agree with you. In fact, I've had people in the past say, I hate you. I wish horrible things for you, but you made me think about something. You made me think a little differently. Hey, maybe there's some place where we can agree. And for me, that's the good part of doing this. When you can have dialogue that makes people think a little bit differently. I'm not trying to indoctrinate. I'm simply saying, hey, this is how I view the world, and I hope people will come along. But Chris writes me, he says, I'm from the other side of the aisle, and just wanted to say how much I appreciate what you said last night about us all wanting the same thing in the long run. He says, that's absolutely spot on, a prosperous, safe, and bright future for our country and families. And look, I believe that. I believe for the majority. When we're talking about the nutter crowd, though, I got questions.
I don't think that that's the same thing. But he goes on to say, I agree that as we all, as a nation, need to look forward together as one. I agree that some would rather to continue push us apart further rather than bringing us together, just to continue to drive that wedge between us deeper. And for what gain? We're never all going to agree on everything, but that's okay as long as we can listen to each other's concerns respectfully and come to solutions that try to accommodate everyone's concerns as best as we can. And look, that's all I can ask for from someone from quote unquote the other side, is that we have, constructive conversations, and we both respect the fact that we're not always going to agree, but we want to get to a place forward. And I think that's spot on. He finishes up by saying we can accomplish so much more and are so much stronger working together. He says, I don't always agree with what you say, but I respect you. Thanks for standing up for working men and women. Wishing our nation's hardworking railroaders the best this coming Friday as a strike looks on the horizon. And sadly, something, either a strike or a lockout, is probably going to come on Friday. We'll wake up Friday morning and find out. But it's this kind of stuff that I think is important. And these are the conversations that we want to have, especially as we embark on our working class hero tour, as we are going to go into places and talk to people that maybe you wouldn't normally. And it's going to be in moments uncomfortable. It's going to be moments of maybe things like this. Hey, I agree with you. I don't agree with you. I do. But we should have these constructive discussions and then come to some bit of understanding. Because the way I see things having played out as a working person in this country, the wealth class of this country's gotten everything they've wanted. They've got the best democracy money can buy. You go back to the golden age of our economy, my grandparents' generation. We had strong labor unions. We had strong manufacturing bases. We had communities built around manufacturing, and that was their identity. And that was the driver of their economy. And everyone prospered. The working people prospered. The rich people prospered. Not as much as they wanted. There's some truth in that. We didn't have the obscene billionaire class that we have today. But they did well. Everyone moved forward together. There was none of this giant gulf between the haves and the have-nots. The alligator jaws have gotten wider and wider. Now, fortunately, because of some of the policies of the Biden administration, those jaws are closing a little bit, but we're seeing the spasm of those jaws going to snap back on someone's behind, which means more strikes, which means more uncomfortable situations. But at the end of it, what we have to do, what you, me, the working class of this country have to do, is we have to stand together, even when it's uncomfortable. And I go back to, what I was doing on election night 2020. I was leading a strike of 55 workers. 3/4 of them voted for Trump because they were fighting the right fight, the righteous fight. It wasn't right-left. It wasn't Democrat-Republican. It was up-down. It was those people sitting in the boardrooms, in the penthouses, in the ivory towers, living lives that most people can't even fathom, demanding that working people give up more of their health care, more of their retirement, take lower wages for the wealth that they're creating. And oh, by the way, in the case of these railroaders, give up their life. Give up every waking moment, every moment, being at the beck and call of a multi-billion-dollar industry. And for what? Well, a handful of pennies more. This is where this is where the class war is. We have to be conscious of the reality of what's being presented to us. So when Warren Buffett says it's class warfare and my class is winning, but it shouldn't be, he's right. Because while they have all the money, we've still outprocreated them. There's more of us. And if only we could see that. If only we could hold hands and march forward, shoulder to shoulder. This is an opportunity for that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell me what you think. Also, if you miss any portion of the program or any of our programs, the podcast is always there for you, on demand, anytime to take with you on the go. Also, make sure you grab the app, wherever your app store, Google Play, all of that stuff. Simple.
Flash flooding, debris flow causing big problems for firefighters, damaging their trucks and stranding drivers.
Torrential rains break historic California heat wave, capping a summer of extreme heat.
We are playing with fire.
All reactors shut down at besieged Ukrainian nuclear plant. Plus,
so today I ask my colleagues to stand up for our kids, for our grandchildren, and for future generations.
Looming showdown over energy permitting reform in Congress.
All of those showdowns and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
It's been a brutal week in this town. Oh my God, it's like LA was like Death Valley with In-N-Out burgers. I mean,
true. I was here. This is your Green News Report.
People in this town are going to their hot yoga class to cool off.
Okay, Desi Doyen, we finally made it through the heat wave out here in Los Angeles, out here in California. It was terrible. It was endless, but it's finally ended.
Yes, we've had some extreme swings in extreme weather.
Yep.
In Los Angeles, dozens of motorists were rescued after getting trapped by a mudslide, just one of several caused by remnants of Hurricane K in the Pacific, which also helpfully ended the historic heat wave in the state.
We had to count on a hurricane to end our heat wave.
Dozens of wildfires sparked by the intense heat continue to rage on, however, in the Northwest, blanketing the region in hazardous smoke. That record-shattering 12-day heat wave in western states capped a summer of unprecedented extreme heat waves across the entire northern hemisphere. In Europe, summer 2022 was the hottest ever recorded since records began in the 1800s, according to the EU's Climate Monitoring Service.
Gosh, I wonder how that happened.
A new study warns that the Middle East is warming up twice as fast as the rest of the planet, meaning that 400 million people in the region are likely to face even more intense heat waves, more severe drought, more frequent sandstorms, crop failures, and water shortages in coming decades, with profound impacts for the volatile region.
Luckily, they've got a lot of oil to sell so they can afford the air conditioning.
In other news, with the death of Queen Elizabeth in Britain, Prince Charles is now King Charles III. That has sparked questions about whether he will continue his decades-long advocacy for climate action and conservation in his new role.
He actually has been kind of a champion for the climate, right?
Since the 1970s.
I'm no fan of the monarchy, but I'm a fan of people who are good on climate.
But actual policy is set by the UK Parliament. In one of her first official acts, new Conservative Prime Minister Liz Truss ended England's ban on fracking, citing spiking energy costs triggered by Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Off with her head.
Truss also proposed freezing energy prices for 2 years and capping the energy bills of millions of households facing 80% price increases. Here in the U.S., a new study warns that rising seas are set to inundate millions of acres of our coastline within the next 30 years. The study by Climate Central combined tidal data with sea level rise projections and U.S. coastal property records to identify those most at risk.
Yeah, so it's not just property on the coast. It's actual houses and people who live there.
Yes, and the analysis found that nearly 650,000 individual privately owned parcels are projected to fall below changing tidal boundaries by 2050. The biggest impacts will be on the Gulf Coast and Atlantic coast.
Well, they've got a lot of oil to sell there, so I'm sure they can help pay for moving everyone off the coast.
In Congress, a big fight is brewing over permitting reform. Democrats are negotiating a bill to speed up the permitting process for various kinds of energy projects, both fossil and renewable, which was the price for getting Coal State Senator Joe Manchin's vote for President Biden's climate bill, the Inflation Reduction Act. Late last week, a third of congressional Democrats came out against reported provisions in the bill, which they said would harm low-income and indigenous communities. On the Senate floor, independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont expressed his strong opposition to the side deal.
I just ask you to think ahead 10, 15, 20 years. Think about the discussion you'll be having with your kids or your grandchildren when that young person looks you in the eye and says, Dad, Grandma, what did you do to save the planet?
Finally, some good-ish news. External power has been restored to Ukraine's besieged Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, and employees have also successfully shut down the plant's last operating reactor. Russia's military actions in Ukraine repeatedly cut reliable external power supplies needed to prevent the reactors from overheating to the point of meltdown. The UN's International Atomic Energy Agency says both actions now significantly reduce the risk of a radiation disaster.
For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I get a lot of emails from folks going, you talk about Pennsylvania an awful lot. Spend a lot of time on that governor's race. And it's true. While we've got stations all across the country, I think Pennsylvania is right now I'm going to say the most important state, not just because I live here, because I think that we could have an election where someone who is willing to set aside election results, someone who will sign right to work into law on day one, someone who will cut education funding in half and create, well, as has been said, they want Pennsylvania to be the Florida of the Northeast. I hope the voters of Pennsylvania understand it, and I hope the people across the country get how important this is. That's why I've asked Pennsylvania State Representative Austin Davis to come talk with us. He is currently the nominee for lieutenant governor running on the Josh Shapiro for governor ticket. Austin, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, thank you so much for having me this evening.
I don't think I'm being hyperbolic in saying that this is the most important election across the country because of the difference in the two campaigns and the direction that each side would take this state.
Oh, no, I think you're 100% correct. The contrast between Josh Shapiro and Doug Mastriano could not be clearer, and the stakes could not be higher in this race. And so the result is not just going to set the course for the next 4 years here in Pennsylvania. It's going to set the course for the next 40 and have major implications at the national level as well.
Now, I'm a union guy. A lot of my listeners are union people. I'm trying to impress upon them how important this election is and really the difference between the two camps. I look at someone like Mastriano, who has said that he's in favor of passing the so-called right-to-work law, the right to freeload law that we've seen in other states that have ruined wages, have destroyed working conditions, have taken health care and retirement security and made them worse. I know you're in a different direction. Where would you go with that?
Well, so you're 100% right, Rick. Our fundamental rights and freedoms are on the line here in Pennsylvania, and if you care about workers' rights, if you care about the ability to join a union, which we know is the quickest way to join the middle class here in America, that's on the line here on November 8th. And let me tell you, I'm the proud son of a union bus driver and a hairdresser. My dad's a Pittsburgh Regional Transit bus operator, and I've seen firsthand how a union job can build a solid foundation for a person or a family. And so if you care about workers' rights, if you care about having a pathway to the middle class, Josh Shapiro and I are for you. We are running against a candidate who said on day one he wants to break unions and pass right-to-work legislation here in Pennsylvania. That is not a joke, folks. Look at what they've done in Wisconsin and other states. That could be our reality here, and we are fighting that each and every day up until November 8th.
No, I mean, he's, in my view, an extremist on every issue right down the line, education being part of that as well. How extreme is it to say that we're going to cut education funding in half in a state that is already at the bottom of funding for education?
I mean, look, we have a a right here in Pennsylvania to a thorough and efficient education system, and that's enshrined in our Constitution. And folks, young people, regardless of their zip code, deserve that opportunity. I wouldn't be here in this position today if it wasn't for the strong public school system that I went to in the city of McKeesport, and the strong public school teachers that poured into me and invested in me. And we should be supporting them. Our young people are facing challenges today that they never had before, and teachers are facing challenges today that they've never had to face before, and they deserve our support. We should be investing in public education, lifting our teachers up, and not taking them away. Quite frankly, that'd be dangerous for this state, and it would set us back decades.
You know, I look at this, Austin, and we're at a moment. I believe we're at a crossroads moment in this country. And one election could decide, as you said, the next 40 years. Education, a pathway to a prosperous future. Unions, the ability to share in the wealth that your labor creates. Strong investments in infrastructure, investments in policy that's going to move us in a positive direction. All of those things are on the line in this moment. And I look at someone like Mastriano, and this is the concern. This is someone who's going to tell you government doesn't work. We don't want government to work. I don't know why we would want him in charge of something that he doesn't believe in and wants to destroy. It seems very odd to me.
Yeah, I got to say, Josh Shapiro and I have spent the last few months traveling all across Pennsylvania, and we've been doing a lot of listening. What we hear consistently is folks want government leaders who are going to lead with compassion and empathy, not leaders who are going to continue to divide us. And most of all, they want leaders who are going to address issues that they and their families are facing, like dealing with rising costs and dealing with making sure every child has access to a quality education, and making sure that we have mental health supports for our young people, and making sure our communities are safe. Doug Mastriano hasn't put forward a policy position to deal with any of the issues that are facing Pennsylvanians today. He's continued to peddle in the politics of fear and division. We don't need leaders who are going to drive us further apart. We need leaders who are going to bring us together, and that's what Josh Shapiro and I have proven over the course of our careers in public service, and that's the message we're taking all across Pennsylvania each and every single day.
Yeah, good stuff. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Pennsylvania State Representative Austin Davis. He's the nominee for Lieutenant Governor, running with Josh Shapiro. You want to check out the website, shapirodavis.org. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. Also, joshshapiro.org if you want to take a look at the campaign as well. So here's the thing. I know how bad Doug Mastriano is. I always want to vote for someone. So the question is what is it that when you guys win, what direction do you guys want to take the state? What's your priority? What is that one thing that Austin Davis says, this is what we have to do for working people? This is what we have to do for the citizens of Pennsylvania?
So let me say this. Josh Shapiro and I will always have workers' backs. We're going to fight to defend and expand the right to organize here in Pennsylvania. Josh has repeatedly said he's going to veto right-to-work legislation and fight against any attacks on prevailing wage here in Pennsylvania. We're going to work to expand the workforce by investing in apprenticeship programs and career and technical training for our young people. And we're going to cut red tape that holds workers back by eliminating a 4-year degree requirement and eliminating red tape in the Commonwealth. That's our promise to workers, and we're going to get up every single day when we're lucky enough to serve you all as governor and lieutenant governor to deliver on those promises.
Now, how's that going to attract jobs? I mean, I keep hearing people say, well, it's always great to have those liberal ideas, but you're not going to be able to create jobs, Austin. You're not going to attract business, because business is what matters in this country.
Yeah, so we're going to work to attack the labor shortages that we're currently facing and the lack of skilled workers that impact both businesses and workers. We're going to create opportunity for workers and businesses by investing more in apprenticeship and career and tech educational programs. We're going to extend industry partnership grants to support recruitment efforts at companies. And we're going to cut taxes and red tape. We're going to cut the degree requirements and occupational licensing fees in the Commonwealth. And we're going to create more opportunities and increasing investments for our workers in expanding our workforce. That's what we're going to do. We're going to invest in our workers, because investing in our workers is an investment in our economy.
Let me ask you this. I mean, there are a lot of problems facing the Commonwealth, a lot of problems facing urban areas, facing rural areas. Gun violence is on the rise in a lot of places and is in the news. And I know a lot of my rural voting friends, they're concerned about gun rights. While we talk about labor rights, we talk about investments, we talk about all those things that may catch their ears. I've got some rural friends who, the gun, that's all they care about. Are you a gun grabber?
No. If you're a legal law-abiding citizen, we believe in this. You should have the right to own a firearm. Gun violence is a personal issue for me. It's why I entered public service when somebody was shot on my block when I was 16 years old. And I've always fought to protect people's rights to be a gun owner, but also fought to reduce gun violence in our communities. And we can do that by working, investing in violence prevention programs. I'm proud of the work I've done in the gun violence reduction grant program in Harrisburg to grow that account, that pot from $5 million to $70 million. We're going to work to combat the systemic issues that lead to gun violence, like poverty, like in making sure every child has access to a quality education, and dealing with trauma in our communities. Everyone deserves to feel safe at home, at school, and in their communities. And we can do that by protecting the rights of gun owners and making our communities safe. It's not an and/or proposition. We can and must do both.
Yeah, I mean, I just read an email from a listener who was talking about, while we don't agree on things, we agree that we want to move forward and find common ground. Do you find that to be the frame when you're talking to people? Because, look, you're going to need to attract some Republican voters there. There've got to be some sane ones left out there. Do you find that being the what you're coming across?
Yeah, you know what, I do. And Josh and I have said we will work with everyone, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, anybody who wants to make Pennsylvania a better place and deliver for working class folks. And so I think there are folks who want to really tackle the issues and tackle Pennsylvania's biggest problems in a serious way. And they're going to find that they have a partner in Josh Shapiro and I to do just that.
Yeah, good stuff. Last question I've got for you. There was the image of your opponent, Mastriano, all dressed up in a Confederate soldier uniform. Curious reaction to that?
Yeah, that's something that's deeply offensive. As to be the senator from Gettysburg, the deadliest battle in the Civil War, and to choose to wear a Confederate uniform. And let's be clear, this wasn't a reenactment. And the Army War College stated, and I quote, that did not represent their values. As a person of color, that's deeply offensive to me. That uniform represents the fight to continue to enslave people of color. It's offensive. I think it's outrageous that someone who wants to be a leader or carries themselves as a leader in this Commonwealth would wear that uniform, particularly when Pennsylvania was not a part of the Confederacy and has a history of fighting against the Confederacy in the Civil War. I think that makes him unfit to not just be a senator in the Pennsylvania General Assembly, but the governor of this Commonwealth.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. But, Austin, I appreciate you taking time for us. I hope you'll come back and share some more as the campaign continues.
Thanks so much, Rick. Look forward to coming back.
Good stuff. Austin Davis, Pennsylvania State Representative, running for Lieutenant Governor along with Josh Shapiro. Check out the website, ShapiroDavis.org, also JoshShapiro.org. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. We'll take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the House Oversight Committee, they are asking the National Archives simply to confirm that Donald Trump doesn't have any more of the records that they want back. And this is one of those things, I think the National Archives should say, hey, this is what may be still out there. And I think this is what the House Oversight Committee is going for. What does he have left? And then, make them, and this is one of those key moments. Go back to the Trump camp and go, okay, we think we've got everything. Now you're going to write and you're going to certify that you've given it all up, that all of the things you stole, you gave back. And I had an interesting conversation with someone the other day who said, they should just pardon Trump. I go, they can't pardon Trump. He's like, why can't they? I go, even if Biden wanted to, and I doubt that he would want to, you can't. Because in order to pardon him, he has to admit that he did something wrong. He has to make an allocution kind of thing. He has to make right. And this is someone who never thinks he's wrong. So that pardon thing, not possible. Just seems interesting. Also, what I find very interesting is finally we've heard from Reality Winner. You may remember Reality Winner. She was the former intelligence contractor. She served, more than 4 years in prison for one single document on Russian interference to the 2016 presidential election. She told NBC News that she finds it interesting, ironic, if you will, that the guy who prosecuted her, the guy who sought to aggressively prosecute her, had hundreds of documents that got her locked. One. She had one. Got her locked up for over 4 years. And, as I said before, when we first began talking about this, I go, 4 years for one document. How many for 300? How many for that? Interesting times. Now remember, you got the lock her up crowd, and this is, they're vehement. Losing the mind. Not a peep. And this is where I struggle, buying the story that, like Kash Patel said, he can just wave his hands. He can wave his hands. And by waving his hands, everything's declassified. And I think that plays into our ignorance of how this system actually works. But also it plays into the fact that they're spreading tons of lies and disinformation. But here we are in this moment. Lots to do, lots to think about. This election matters. And I look at the conversation I just had with Austin Davis, who I like a lot. He's got a great story. Like he said, union bus driver, father, mother works hard, opportunity that he got through education and hard work. That's the American dream. That's for working class people. That's what we should be working hard to replicate. As I've been putting together the trip that we're going to embark on in October, I've been thinking a lot about the person living in the house that I grew up in. And I've had these conversations with my wife over the years that, I've been very fortunate that I've lived the kind of life as a, 8, 10, 12, 13-year-old kid could have never imagined. And it comes back to, some very, very specific things. I got a good education, even though I didn't take advantage of it as I should have. I had opportunities because I got a job working in a union facility that paid me good wages. I've been able to use hard work and dedication and long hours, yes, but also the empowerment and the contract that comes with being a union member to lead a life that I could have never imagined. So I've been thinking about the person growing up in that housing project that I lived in, and the opportunities that kid might face in the future, and asking myself, how do I ensure that? How do we as a society ensure that that kid gets the same shot that I got? That if he's willing to work hard or she's willing to work hard, that there's an opportunity forward for them. And then I come back to my state of Pennsylvania, and again to this governor's race that just I'm fixated on, because this to me is the choice between democracy and fascism, the choice between opportunity for everyone and, well, shutting off half of the country from any opportunity. In fact, Doug Mastriano shared a video of a young girl going on about how feminism is destructive, and it's destroying the world. And when women got the right to vote, then they got pushed into the workforce, and you're basically making the argument that women should be barefoot pregnant in the kitchen and subservient to men. And I guess this is what the homeschool world is pushing. This is what the Christian dominionists are pushing, the zealot class. This is what they're pushing down our throats. This world that, back to the kitchen, honey. And I watched this video, and it was frightening to think that a young girl would think this way. No, we shouldn't vote. We shouldn't bother ourselves with that. The fight against toxic masculinity is wrong. There's no such thing. While also saying that we shouldn't guarantee outcomes, but we should give people equal opportunity. I'm going, yeah, I know. There's some inconsistencies in the argument. But I find it interesting, and as I was watching it, deconstructing some of it, we've got falling birth rates because the Rockefeller people of the past, indoctrinated children to destroy the family unit, and you go, where do you get this stuff from, and who believes this? Well, the video was seen, a whole bunch of times, and you have a guy running for governor pushing this. Now, as I said, this guy's dangerous. He has said that he is on the record saying he opposes women's right to choose under every circumstance. No rape, no incest, no life of the mother, nothing. Nothing. Attacks public education. We're gonna slash that in half. And the other part of this, and the part that they haven't said out loud yet, and understand there is a movement of religious extremists who go, no, we want the cash, which is why they keep trying to put a dollar figure on every student. The charter schools have already done this. They know if they can get a kid to come into their school, cha-ching, 10 grand. That's revenue for them. Even if after a couple months they send them back to the public schools, they get to keep the money in most states. That's how they see this. What the Christian nationalists want, they want to be able to put that dollar figure on those kids' heads so that when the quiverful folks have, 19 and counting, 20 and counting, that each one of those kids is cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. That's the view. No, Rick, you're crazy. That's not what, it's exactly what they want. So we are most certainly at a crossroad moment. We're most certainly in a moment where the extremists are running the asylum, so to speak. Question is, are we going to stand for it? And this is where I reach out to Republicans like the guy earlier who sent me the email saying, you know what, hey, I'm from the other side of the aisle, don't always agree, but hey, is there a way to reach those folks and go, this is about much bigger than which team you bought the hat for. This is about much bigger than what letter you put on your voter registration. This is about the future of our country and what that vision looks like. And I'll tell you, the vision that I see coming out of the right is scary. It is, as Jeff Timmer said, it is fascist. It is an authoritarian future. It is a future of workers that are viewed as the master-slave relationship, master-servant relationship. It's women back in the kitchen, gays in the closet, blacks back, and people of color back in the fields. Not a place I think most of us want to be. Love to hear your thoughts, though. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments? Love to hear it. Also, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss a moment. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1929. That was the day that Ella Mae Wiggins was gunned down on her way to a rally of striking textile workers in North Carolina. Ella Mae was born in the mountains of Tennessee. Her father was a lumberjack who was killed on the job. She and her brother had entered the textile mills to help support their family. She married another mill employee, and they had 7 children. When her husband left, Ella Mae struggled to keep her family afloat. When the Great Depression came, textile mill workers were subject to the, quote, stretch out. Owners demanded that fewer workers quicken their pace to produce the same results. In response, textile workers began to organize and strike in Gaston County, the heart of the Southern textile industry. Ella Mae became a local leader of the National Textile Workers Union. She advocated for organizing both white and black workers. She became known for leading the other workers in song. One of her most poignant songs was the Mill Mother's Lament. The lyrics told her personal struggle of a mother trying to support her children. On the day she was killed, Ella Mae was in a truck heading to the workers' rally. They were met by an armed mob deployed by the mill owners. The unarmed workers turned their truck around, but the mob chased them and gunned down Ella Mae. 5 people were charged, but they were acquitted of her murder.
We leave our homes in the morning. We kiss our children goodbye. While we slave for the bosses, our children scream and cry.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Our grocery bills to pay. Not a cent to spend for clothing. Not a cent to...
For generations, workers have been punished by corporate bosses for watching the clock. But now, the corporate clock is watching workers, called digital productivity monitoring. This surveillance is done by an integrated computer system including a real-time clock, camera, keyboard tracker, and algorithms to provide a second-by-second record of what each employee is doing. Jeff Bezos, boss of Amazon, pioneered use of this ticking electronic eye in his monstrous warehouses, forcing hapless, low-paid pickers to sprint down cavernous stacks of consumer stuff to fill online orders pronto. Beat the clock or be fired. Terrific policy, exclaimed taskmasters at hospital chains, banks, tech giants, newspapers, colleges, and other outfits employing millions of mid-level professionals. So they've been installing these unblinking digital snoops to watch their employees, even timing their bathroom breaks and constantly eyeing each one's pace of work. They've plugged in new software with such Orwellian names as Work Smart and Time Doctor to count workers' keystrokes and to snap pictures every 10 minutes of workers' faces and screens, recording all on digital scoreboards. You are paid only for the minutes the computers, quote, see you in action. Bosses hail the electronic minders as fit bits of productivity, spurring workers to keep noses to the grindstone and also to instill workplace honesty. Only the whole scheme is dishonest. No employee's worthiness can be measured in keystrokes and 10-minute snapshots. This is Jim Hightower saying employees call this digital management demoralizing, toxic, and just wrong. But corporate investors are pouring billions into it. Which group do you trust to shape America's workplace?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So on Monday, we had Tom Hartman, the radio host on the program, talking about his new book that's come out. And he made a comment one comment that got the most attention, especially from my MAGA hat wearing friends. He said that you look at states like Wyoming and Montana and some of those western states that at one point had been blue, but during the Reagan era forward, people They bought talk radio. And those states have become solidly, not just red, but really kind of crazy red. And he said basically, look, it's because of this. And boy, the hat folks, really unhappy. And the reality is that's what happened. They started talking to people, presenting what Trump would call the alternative realities. And now they live in their whole other world with their own media that spews nonsense. For instance, I think right now the Biden administration is absolutely killing it. But if you look at what our news media is throwing out at us, it's all bad. And this is why we need local media. We need local control of media. And we need, people who are going to actually tell the truth. And that's why I've asked my next guest, Tara McGowan, to come talk with us. She's the co-founder of Courier Newsroom. There are folks across states across the country doing just that, some local reporting. Tara, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks so much for having me, Rick. It's great to be here.
So, I want to start with this point that Hartman made, and I absolutely agree with. In fact, I've made it for a very long time, watched it happen, in lunchrooms that I've been in over the years. We used to have information, and that information was widely trusted. And, the end of the fairness doctrine, you end up having these moneyed interests on the extreme right presenting and talking to people with information that, little sketchy in my view.
That's right. It's, information and good information, factual information is the lifeblood of democracy. And what we have seen is an increasing deployment of misinformation and disinformation and straight up lies by right-wing media in this country, whether it's on talk radio, whether it's online, through pink slime fake news sites that have popped up all over this country that use AI-driven content to be able to manipulate and sow confusion in folks. And it's had real-world impacts. We've seen that in everything from the lack of adoption and mistrust in the vaccines during the pandemic, which over-indexed in Republican-led states in this country, as did deaths from the pandemic, to, of course, what we saw as the siege in the Capitol, all from folks that believed and were mobilized around a very, very big lie that had no evidence to back it up. So this is it's a real crisis in this country and around the world today.
But if you judge, what I read in the mainstream corporate controlled media, and especially in the right-wing echo chamber, which more and more they seem to be, kind of in the same world now. You would think everything's horrible. The sky's falling, the end of humanity. The sliced bread that was wonderful is now moldy. You would think it was horrible. And yet, I'm looking at, the fact that we're talking about reshoring manufacturing. We're rebuilding our infrastructure. We're talking about creating good family sustaining jobs. There's so much in this moment to be excited about. And yet all that keeps being led with is, division and hatred.
That's right. And there's a lot of layers to this problem too. I don't want to reduce it to the right-wing media, and the disinformation machine is a huge problem and a culprit. But to your point, mainstream media and traditional media outlets are not doing their jobs anymore. They have business model incentives that have them focusing on people who already want good information and news, and who are more elite and coastal, and at the real detriment of reaching the mass public in this country. They're not evolving their models to reach people where they get their information, which is predominantly online and on social media, for better and for worse. And they're focused on people who are paying consumers. And so that's also added to the information gap and crisis in this country, is that people live in real good information deserts, but they don't live in information deserts because everyone, for the most part, has access in some way or another to the internet. And that's where information moves the most readily and the fastest. And that's also the biggest difference, right, in our society today, is that we no longer have a centralized media. We no longer have a few trusted channels and voices that everyone was getting their information from. Whether that information was biased or not, everyone was relying on the same local evening news television anchors or newspapers of record to get their information. And with the internet and social media, everybody picks and chooses or passively takes in what is fed to them through algorithms. And so because of that, we really do have a really big vacuum that is being filled by this trash, if you will. And it's really a difficult thing to counter, but we can't rely any longer, as I think Democrats and progressives did for a really long time, on that mainstream traditional media to do the bidding of facts and truth. They have different incentives, and they're simply just they're not up to the task any longer. We've seen the results of that.
No, and look, I blame Democrats for a lot of things. One of them
I do too.
One of us, they didn't compete in the talk radio space at the beginning when they should have. And it's, I look at Hartman's comments that I have made myself over the years, and I think a lot of people have, that we stopped talking to rural communities, especially rural communities. Democrats stop talking to them, and I don't know why, because the policies that they push and the things that they want to do actually benefit rural communities much more than what conservatives do, but yet you would know it based on what's being presented.
That's right. And where the right has an agenda and an incentive, right? They don't want people to have that information about what government is doing good for you and your family and your community if that government is led by Democrats. The other side, the media that doesn't have a bias towards one or the other or claims not to, they have an incentive to keep things controversial or to stoke controversy. They don't have an incentive to talk about what government does well because it doesn't drive clicks or traffic. It doesn't drive controversy. That's part of the problem. Like, we need a media that is incentivized by the good of providing good information to people, so we have an informed, participating electorate and strong democracy in this country, to be incentivized because of those reasons to talk about the good that government is doing when it does good. It doesn't mean being in their bag. It doesn't mean to be in their corner or be their puppet. It's getting the facts across, because when government does good things like this administration has done, like Democrats in the Senate have done by passing the Inflation Reduction Act, passing the CHIPS Act, passing the American Rescue Plan that saved small businesses across this country and put shots in millions of people's arms, that is information that is empowering. People need that information, and they're getting so much disinformation or lack of this information because there aren't more models and more news organizations really prioritizing it.
No, you're absolutely right. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show with Tara McGowan, co-founder of Career Newsroom. Make sure you check out their website, careernewsroom.com, and all of the states that have newsrooms, like our state here in Pennsylvania, the Keystone. When we do our tour here in October, we'll be leaning on a number of those newsrooms across states like Wisconsin's Up North News, the Gander in Michigan, and also the Starting Line out in Iowa. Looking forward to dealing with those folks. Now, you were the big signing yesterday of the Inflation Reduction Act. You were there, right?
I was very fortunate to be invited to the White House celebration because of the work that I and so many of my team members and colleagues and friends did to get Joe Biden into office by spreading good information and factual information about Trump and his administration's failures and corruption in the lead up to the 2020 election. So it was a really wonderful moment to just pause and reflect. No one got to celebrate that enormous feat and victory when it happened because of the pandemic, and so it was a lovely thing for the White House to do for everyone who helped make that happen, and to celebrate it for everyone across the country who really made it happen by showing up to vote.
Yeah, now I look at this piece of legislation as something very important. It's going to set us in a direction to deal with a little bit. Now, it's never enough. I wanted much bigger, much chunkier, much more visionary, but we got what you can get. And this is moving us to deal with climate. And I look at this administration, where, like I said, we're bringing back manufacturing, and more factory starts than I can remember in any time in my life. And yet, I go back to the Trump years. He talked a lot about infrastructure week every week. We got cute pictures of him driving trucks and playing with toys. He talked about reshoring manufacturing. Did a lot of talking, a lot of talking,
a lot of tweeting, a lot of talking, not a lot of policy making or action.
And here we are, the guy who's struggling to really talk, doing the work that needs to be done. And for me, that's what I want. I want a guy who's not going to say a lot, but is going to get things done. And I think we're in a moment, Tara, we're at kind of a crossroads moment. Do we want to go back to talking about doing something, or do we want to actually do it? And I think this is an important moment.
Yeah, government has to do things for people to believe in and trust government and to participate in our democracy. And that's what this administration does. They have gotten more done than any administration in my lifetime. And it's been under 2 years. And the American people need to know that, and they need to know what it means for them, not just how it got there, the sausage making process, the votes, et cetera. And they need to know who voted for these measures that are going to better their lives and who didn't. Not one single Republican voted for the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act, the most historic climate change legislation we've had in this country. It's going to bring down the costs of prescription drugs in this country, and it's paid for by taxing wealthy corporations. This is what the American people want. The Biden administration and Democrats have delivered on it, and now that information needs to get to the American people. And that's exactly why we started Courier Newsroom, because the media is not doing its job.
No, and this is, again, one of these moments where I think there needs to be much more attention spent on what this administration is actually doing, other than the hyperbole we get out of the right wing that the sky is falling, it's the end of the world. And maybe for them it is, because I'm hoping we're ending neoliberalism. I'm hoping we're ending all of those bad policies that destroyed that American dream that my grandparents' generation built. And I think we have to have that education process of exactly what happened. You go back to that supply side voodoo Reaganomic era of we're going to give the wealthy everything they could possibly want, and maybe something will fall out of it. Maybe some will trickle down. And I tell you, I've been trickled on enough, but it ain't the rivers of gold and honey that I was told it was going to be.
No, that's exactly right. It's a trickle, if anything at all. And until a crisis strikes, right, and the government needs to act and nobody gets in the way of it, because we have to solve for a crisis, do we actually see things get done? And I think we're really turning a corner on that. And there was just research that came out the other day that I saw that showed when people know what this administration has done, they are supportive of it. It is when they don't access that information. It's when they're hearing lies, when they're hearing ideological driven narratives by the right that are just there to try to put Biden and Democrats down to be able to win elections on the right. And look what their alternative they're presenting. We have extremists running the Republican Party in this country, people who want to take away the rights of millions of women and families, obstruct measures that are going to put money in people's pockets and jobs in people's communities, that's going to save this planet from the crisis that we're already witnessing. It's just, the contrast is so unbelievably stark. It's no longer hyperbole. We're living through witnessing and experiencing what they want to take away and what their agenda is on the extreme right. And then we have an administration and Democrats in Congress that are actually doing something for the American people. So we no longer have to talk about the visions or the platforms and how they're different. It's actually the actions, not the words.
Yeah, and for those people who go, wow, they're all the same. No, they're not all the same.
They're not.
The thing that's always amazed me is I have Republican friends who vote for politicians who tell them that government is bad, government can't do anything, government's broken, and then they elect them to prove that, yeah, we can break government, we can not do anything, we can gridlock, we can do all of this stuff, and then we can allow the wealthy to come in, swoop up, and, well, cash in.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, that is the surest and fastest way to authoritarianism in this country and fascism in this country is if we stop believing in embedding our government and our institutions, and we let bad actors take the reins, and we trust only them and listen to only them. And that is exactly the agenda of the extreme right in this country. That is what they want. And that is what they are confusing and lying to and manipulating so many people in this country to believe, is that they're going to do right by them when really all they're looking for is unfettered control and not to do anything good with it.
Yeah, and this is where messaging is so important, and good information, the kind of work that you're doing, I think is so important. So you talked a moment ago, and I swear I kind of want to finish up with this. You talked a moment ago about business models, and when you think about messaging, you think about media, you think about information, in news, you're not thinking about the business part of this, and I think that's an important, as you're filtering through what's being presented, I think that's a huge part of it, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is. And honestly, that's another crisis that we have in this country. We know this because local news is shuttering all over this country because they weren't able to evolve their business models. Their advertising revenue that they relied on for generations was tanked by the rise of platforms like Facebook and Google that really cannibalized the advertising industry with nothing to save them. We don't have sustainable media models in this country. We don't have government-funded media at scale the way other countries do. We need to find more diversified, sustainable models. We need people to invest in good information and journalism for it to exist. So that is something that I think about all the time. We built Courier in a model that relies, yes, on investors that we're transparent about, but also it's going to rely over time to keep existing on the people in the communities, to keep it alive, to read it, to consume the videos, the information that we push out on social media every day, where most people are, and to invest, to pay back into this model, never needing to. We don't want paywalls, but to believe believe that this is a civic utility. This is necessary for us to have all of the things we want, to have nice things like healthcare, and jobs, and an economy that actually helps lift up the middle class in this country instead of diminish it the way that right-wing and neoliberal policies have done, as you mentioned.
Great stuff. I hope folks will check out the website, couriernewsroom.com. We'll get links out on social media. You can find your state and your local news. All good stuff, Tara McGowan. I appreciate you taking time for us.
Thank you so much for all you do, Rick. It's great to be here.
Thanks so much. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break right back after this. Remember, you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Share with your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers. They might learn something. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1959. The United States Congress had passed the Landrum-Griffin Act. President Eisenhower signed the new law, which was also called the Labor Management Reporting and Disclosure Act. The new law had lasting consequences for the way unions operated. One of the reasons Congress passed the law was alleged abuses of power by some union leaders. The law aimed to protect workers by requiring secret ballots for union elections and protecting freedom of speech within unions. It also required unions to submit annual financial reports to the Department of Labor. While these requirements protected members' rights, not all of the provisions were so positive. The law was passed during the 1950s Red Scare. It required that no one could hold a union-elected leadership position until 5 years after leaving the Communist Party. This part of the law was declared unconstitutional in 1965. The law also expanded the anti-labor provisions of the Taft-Hartley Act. The Taft-Hartley Act prohibited some union activities, such as sympathetic strikes and secondary boycotts. The Landrum-Griffin Act took this all a step further. It tightened the boycott restrictions. It also put limits on the union's ability to picket while organizing for recognition. It placed considerable new federal reporting requirements on the unions. Despite these further restrictions upon labor unions, union workers comprised a third of the total workforce in the United States during the 1950s, the highest percentage of union workers in U.S. history. But the restrictive policies laid out in Taft-Hartley and Landrum-Griffin would help slow and eventually reverse this growth of unionization. Today, less than 12% of U.S. workers are members of unions. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So I got this email, and it's one of these things that it's quite remarkable. So I get this email, and it's from a group called the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust. They're the fact people. And I love the Orwellian kind of, we're the fact people. And the kind of tone deafness that this email kind of threw at me. Because here in Pennsylvania, there's a Senate race going on between John Fetterman, the Democratic lieutenant governor, and the TV pitchman, Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz, really wealthy guy. I mean, lives in mansions. In fact, was asked, how many houses he had. He said like 2. He had 10. Mansions, big places, millions of dollars. John Fetterman lives in one of the poorer communities in this state, in Braddock, Pennsylvania, and went there, became mayor. It did all kind of incredible work to help poor people. I mean, the difference in personality and direction could not be greater. But the fact people, they're upset because evidently they're claiming that Fetterman didn't list his assets properly, because they claim he's got real estate assets, and that these assets he should have reported, and they listed them. and the addresses and stuff. And I don't know, I kind of have a problem with that a little bit, listing people's addresses. But when they put the assessed value of the properties, I'm like, really? This is what you're bickering over? Not the guy who's got the mansions that he didn't know about? But the most valuable asset that Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, property-wise, owns is assessed at $41,500, all the way down to a property that's worth assessed value of $700. So most of them are in the $8,000-$10,000 range. And what it is he bought up property around his home and bought up property, I would assume, for at some point to do something, community-wise, because that's where his mind is at. But they're claiming you had to claim this because these are massive assets. And you go, no, you claim real estate assets, if you're making money off of them, and they're not. These are just properties that he owns, and it's public record. It's not like it was anything nefarious. And this is one of those weird moments. They're trying to make a big deal out of, look how wealthy he is. He has all these properties. And I know this is a response to Oz's not knowing how many houses he has or not telling people. It's kind of like Herschel Walker, not kind of coming up with a whole bunch of kids he didn't know he had or didn't want anybody to know he had. This is one of those weird moments. It's the distraction. And I haven't seen any real hard reporting on this yet. I'm looking. There are a couple of reports, and maybe I think most people look at this the way I do. It's kind of ridiculous. But it's that juxtaposition of, I have people all the time who tell me, well, there's no difference between Democrats and Republicans. Well, some Democrats and some Republicans, sure, there might not be. But overall, there's a massive difference. And while I have my problems with the Democratic Party, I have my problems with policies that they've moved, and we've talked about them on this program. In this moment, if you're a working person, I don't know how you look to the Republican Party for any help. I don't know how you look to them for policy that's going to move us in a direction that's going to be beneficial. And I think part of for me why we're embarking on this upcoming tour is to talk about the information that isn't getting out. The fact that we are heading on a path that I truly believe is going to help us restore that pride of the past, restore that opportunity of the past, that American dream of working hard, playing by the rules, and yes, getting ahead. Now you go, but Rick, there are people who are doing that. Yeah, but I would argue not as broad-based as it once was. I think working people need a hand. For too long, policies have been, hey, whoever can think up the next scheme, whoever can use and abuse their workforce, they get ahead, they do well. But what about those people who are punching the clock, working hard, playing by the rules? What about them? And for too long, we've had policymakers who have forgotten them. And this is why I think, and I've said this before, I think rural America is angry because they really viscerally, are the heart and soul of this country. These are people who get up and work hard. These are folks who, are on farms and in factory towns across the country who are giving it all. They're the blood, sweat, and tears, and they're struggling to make ends meet. And why is that? I say it comes back to policy. Good policy created that iconic middle class that we like to try and remember, that the folklore of that past. Good policy did that. Smart policy did that. Bad policy undid it. And these are the conversations we need to have, and this is the direction we need to be talking about. And I think Biden is undoing some of the bad policy of the past, and that's got some moneyed interests, not happy. Because they're used to having their hands firmly on the steering wheel, driving the car, so to speak, even if they're driving it into a ditch for us. I think we're heading in a right track. But one election cycle could undo it all. And Biden was right the other day when he said, look, reality is if Republicans take the House and Senate, it's going to be a long 2 years. Nothing is going to get done because look at how much they were willing to do over these last 2 years. And then look at their agenda. Their agenda is nothing but tear things apart. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. By all means, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally. Also, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss a second. Share with your friends, coworkers, all that stuff. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick